Good afternoon once again, everybody. My name is Joe Pott, and on behalf of SIUE Athletics and Southern Illinois University Edwardsville, I would like to welcome you today to this celebration of life for our colleague, our friend, family member, Kevin Martin. Just want to go over a couple of things as it pertains to our event this afternoon. We've got the microphone here that I'm using. For anybody on the upper level, there's a microphone directly behind me on the mezzanine. We've got our staff members on either corner, so just please see one of our staff members and they'll direct you to the microphone. We'd ask that you resist touching the microphone. I understand you may have to adjust it a little. There's hand sanitizer next to both microphones. We want this to be a relaxed event. We don't have a real timeline of programming, as we suspect that Kevin would have wanted it. And I know that he's watching us today, and he's so happy that all of us could be here to share some stories and talk about our friend and our colleague, Kevin Martin. At the conclusion of today's celebration of life, we will be releasing you by sections. So we'd ask that you just stay in your seats, and we will have somebody come and release you. And before I bring up a couple of folks, I'd like to share just a personal story of my own, of Kevin Martin. I arrived here in the fall of 2008 as the university was transitioning and the athletics department was transitioning to Division I. If you know anything about the way the university was then, there were people at the university that weren't exactly thrilled that athletics was transitioning to Division I, and so we had some resistance. I'm a brand new staff member, brand new to the Department of Athletics, certainly no institutional knowledge. One of the people that welcomed me right off the bat was Kevin Martin. He was working at the foundation at the time. We were doing coaches shows once a month, maybe a little more often, and we needed use of a portable PA system. And it turned out that the foundation had a portable PA system, so every time we did a coaches show, I'd have to go see Kevin and borrow this speaker system that we could use, but he was so welcoming and so friendly and immediately welcomed me to this campus and to this community. And so I was so excited when we were able to bring him home and bring him to athletics in January. And I'd like to think that for those last few months that he had a home in athletics. And we were so proud to have Kevin as part of our group in athletics. And with that, I'd like to bring up our Director of Athletics, Tim Hall.
Good afternoon, everyone. To friends and family of Kevin, our deepest condolences for your loss. Thank you all for coming and attending this celebration of life for our good friend and colleague, Kevin. Many of you have known Kevin for quite some time. Admittedly, I have been at SIUE for 13 months, and I've really only knew Kevin for about 11 of those months. As I reflect on my brief time with Kevin, I want to focus on the notion of shared experiences, curiosity, and the importance of asking questions. As a new athletics director, I was in the process of having to quickly assess many facets, including significant areas of need. Rental management, contract administration, procurement liaison, financial and budget experience, office operations, and student worker oversight were some of the areas that needed attention. At the same time, I was alerted to a person on campus who had these exact experiences and was also looking for a new challenge. I had only heard positive comments about this person and was excited to have the opportunity to meet with him. Kevin and I met a few days later. We had a fabulous conversation that was scheduled for 90 minutes, was scheduled for 45 minutes and went 90. I came away from that visit feeling like we had known each other for many years. So you're sitting here probably saying, he's been here 13 months. How could he feel like he's known Kevin for many years? Shared experiences. Kevin is from Toledo, Ohio. I originally am from Youngstown, Ohio, and I did my undergraduate work at the University of Toledo. I also have relatives that have lived in the Toledo, Ohio area for decades. During our conversation, we talked about a number of things, and I'll list some here. The Old West End in Toledo and the architecture of the houses in that area. We talked about the east side of Toledo. We talked about Tony Paco's restaurant, made famous by Jamie Farr on the TV show MASH. And we would have conversations about and laughing that you would go to Tony Paco's and you would eat knowing that you were going to be stuffed and maybe have heartburn, but if somebody asked you if you would go and do it again, you said that you would. We talked about the Libby Glass Company, where my uncle worked, the Toledo Museum of Art, which is certainly a treasure, the Toledo Botanical Gardens, the Toledo Mud Hens, and during that conversation and in other subsequent conversations, we talked a lot about jazz music. Interestingly enough, as an aside, a conversation about whether Nile Rodgers was really more of a jazz guitarist or a pop funk guitarist. Again, shared experiences, the ties that bind. It was clear to me that Kevin was an understated, thoughtful, hardworking, and curious individual. It was those shared experiences and curiosity that allowed us to build a stronger relationship and even brought us closer. I know many of you can relate to shared experiences that you had with Kevin, and I know that you see those as treasures indeed. Now to curiosity. James Ryan, the president of the University of Virginia and the former dean of the Harvard Graduate School of Education, wrote a fantastic short book titled Wait, What, and Life's Other Essential Questions. In the book, President Ryan details 5 questions that bring about clarity, compassion, conviction, and courage. I will not spoil the book by sharing all 5 of the questions, but I will share one. And I think this was so true of Kevin. And the question is, I wonder why, and I wonder if. Ryan says, I wonder why keeps you curious about the world, and I wonder if keeps you engaged in the world. It is my belief that I wonder why and I wonder if were part of Kevin's daily vernacular. Kevin and I would have talks about how we had both tried at various things and failed. Many of us expect that. Success is failure turned inside out, I always say, and I said to Kevin, and he responded and said, you know, Tim, I never stopped asking, I wonder if I can do that. By doing so, he said, I found so many more things that I was good at or that I love to do. No doubt Kevin had an I wonder why and I wonder if soul. I believe Kevin's love of jazz music, art, architecture, flowers and gardens, mentoring students, etc., was rooted in the question, I wonder why and I wonder if. We also spent time discussing, because of the world we're living in right now, the notion of what we see around us not being impervious to change or improvement. Many reflections had to do with Black Lives Matter movement and a wanting for greater racial equity. For example, we had spirited conversations about what eradicating de jure and de facto segregation would look like. We wondered why it has taken so long to change the hearts of individuals and policymakers. And we wondered if the role that we were willing to play going forward would make a difference. A keen and youthful curiosity, I believe, was a large part of who Kevin was and how he went about his life. My only regret is that I did not have the honor and privilege to know Kevin longer. May you feel his arms around you today, and may you be comforted by fond memories during this particularly difficult time. Thank you. And now I would like to introduce the Chancellor of SIUE, Randy Pembroke.
Thank you, Tim. I want to begin by thanking everyone for being here today. Thank you for taking part in this very special ceremony. It is wonderful to have you here. In particular, I want to thank the family for coming, and some of the family I know traveled halfway across the country to be here. This is the beginning of my 5th year back at SIUE as Chancellor, and as I thought about what I wanted to say today, I can't really say that I knew Kevin well. But there are 3 things that I know with certainty about Kevin that I want to share today. The first one is that you always knew where you stood with Kevin. That's a really important thing, and I don't always get that as Chancellor. So whenever I would say to Kevin, how are things going? There are 2 things that I remember. The first is that when things were going well, Kevin had this amazing smile, and when Kevin would smile, you knew things were good. Whenever I'd say, how are things going, Kevin, and he would kind of sigh and roll his eyes, I knew we had some work to do. But he would always tell me about the things that needed to be done and how we could get there and how to problem solve. So I appreciated that so much about him. The second thing I wanted to say that I know with certainty was that this most recent assignment that Kevin had in athletics, he was so excited about that. We talked a lot about it about a year ago. And so when we were discussing what he might do, the kinds of things that he could accomplish with his skill set here, he was just genuinely excited. And so I'm sad that he didn't have a longer period to do that with athletics, and I'm sorry that the athletic department didn't get to benefit longer from that skill set. The third thing I will say that I know for certain is that he cared deeply about SIUE. This was his home, and so we're going to miss him deeply. To the family, I say our prayers and our thoughts are with you, and I want you to know that SIUE is your home too, and I hope you will come back often and see us. Thank you.
At this point, like we said, we would love to hear your memories, your stories, and anything you'd like to share about Kevin. We'd invite you to use this microphone or the microphone behind me on the mezzanine if you are on the 2nd level. Just see one of our staff members at each side of the mezzanine there, and they'll direct you. And we would be happy to hear your stories and your memories of Kevin. Paul, I think, did you have something? Come on up, please. Don't worry about, we're not worried about formalities. You don't have to raise your hand. Just please come up and share your memories.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Pitts. I'm a retired assistant chancellor for diversity at SIUE, and I have been here in the community for almost 30 years. And I've known Kevin since the day that him and Patrick Williams pulled up in the parking lot looking, they were lost, and I was able to show them the way. And since that day, I think a month has not passed since I retired that Kevin and I didn't have a relationship. And I won't take very much of your time, but I'll share 3 quick stories about Kevin. First of all, I want to share Kevin's compassion. As one of my duties here at SIUE was I was the ADA officer. And Kevin had 2 employees that had some serious ADA situations. And he called me, and being the ADA guy, the American with Disabilities Act compliance officer, I laid out what had to be done, including reconfiguring the upstairs office in Burger Hall, getting some new some new telephone system. I believe we have someone can witness to me for me. He's here. And I showed Kevin the cost. Everything costs, right? And so I go back to the office, and I'm talking to my assistant. I said, now, I'm ready for a fight. I got my Muhammad Ali stance, and I'm ready to do everything. Because I know Kevin is not going to accept what I want, and we're going to have a fight. But to my surprise, you know what happened? He called me back and said, Paul, yes, we're going to do it. So what could I do? You know, I'm ready for this great fight, and Kevin took the fight out of me. That showed Kevin compassion for the people that worked with him and shared the office that he worked over there. Another thing, like I said, I've been here for 30 years, and I've been involved with a lot of things here in the community. So anytime you want to have a good time or to have a good event, to have a party or an event, just call Kevin. When my son graduated from Edwardsville High School, I wanted a place to have his graduation party. I called Kevin, and man, we had a great time over there. My wife will get on me for this, but for my wife's 60th birthday, I said, Kevin, I need a place to show Paula a good time so we can celebrate her 60th birthday. I called him, and it was done. Kevin was a compassionate, caring person. He wasn't perfect. None of us are perfect. But our relationship, since I was one of the people who brought him here along with Patrick, because Patrick called me and said, Paul, I have this African-American man from Toledo. He's great. I worked with him at Lloyd's. I believe Lloyd's University, and I'd like to bring him out. And based on reading his vita, I said, I will certainly approve you bringing out this young man. And since that day and since that time, Kevin and I, until his passing, had a great relationship. I saw him, in a sense, as my little brother. He would call me every now and then, and I would give him some advice. And when the chancellor got on me and it got pretty hot over in Rendleman, I would call Kevin and say, man, I need a break. And you know Kevin's famous word, okay, dude, here's what you do. I like to leave with this very short poem that I heard. I don't even know where I heard it at, but let me leave with this poem. And it's a reflection of Kevin. There are small ships. There are big ships. There are great ships that sail the sea. But the greatest ships of all are friendships, and may they always be. Goodbye, my friend Kevin, and God open up his arms to you.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody else? We would love to hear your stories and your memories as we reflect on the life of Kevin.
Well, most of you who know me, I used to work here, and the folks who know me well also know that, I could be very professional, and sometimes then I get a little bit off the track as far as PC. But Kevin used to love that a little bit. We just had such a great conversation about things. So I want to tell a few little stories. I want to start that I go back to Lourdes University with Kevin Martin, brought him in, and how I got to know him. We were building a program back then for an upstart private Catholic college that had 12 years before, went from a 2-year to a 4-year institution. Had great as far as adult learner program, but not so much as far as traditional age. We were trying to do that. As we grew the program from over those years with Kevin's support and help, from $90,000 raised to almost $6 million by the time I left, we were into our first about year and said we needed some support. And of course, we didn't have funds to do anything. And my associate director, Sister Rosalind, I said, why don't you see about some temporary help? We just need some clerical work, some things to do. And she put out a request for folks from one of the agencies, and who shows up but Kevin. And after about the first day, he just handled things so well, did everything, and as my style goes, I asked him to stop in my office before he leaves. And he came in, he sat down, he said, yes, Mr. Williams. I said, first of all, Mr. Williams is my father. I'm Pat. And he said, okay, Pat. He said, what do you want to know? I said, what's your story? And he started laughing. I said, obviously, the competency, the skills that you're showing me, nothing against any clerical support, but far beyond that on an administrative level. And he tells me about his background out in California. He's talking about what he did in Toledo before he left. And I said, well, what brings you back here? He said, well, my mom got sick. And he goes, and with the rest of the family, we're committed that we don't want to put her in a nursing home, so I want to come back and help out. And so I told him about this university advancement, talked about institutional advancement, the opportunities that I felt and I always had gifted over the years, and said, this might be a good career for you. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. And I don't want to look at the chancellor when I say this one here, or any of the president and CEO of nonprofits, but I told him, I said, I will provide training for you. You could go low cost and everything else, and for every weekend for 2 years, he drove around to little local conferences, training courses, everything else, $25 sessions. He must have did 150 of them. Everything from plan giving to annual gifts to you name it. But the deal was, the reason I want to look at the chancellor is I said, you know what? In 2 years, I'll provide you training. If I can't pay you, I will give you a title and swear by it to anybody that wants to hire you at that point in time. Well, needless to say, I didn't need to do that. Wrote out my career as far as the Lourdes University, and then got the opportunity to come to SIUE. Within the first 10 months of coming to SIUE, understanding the makeup, what we needed to do, what we needed to build the foundation, work with the institution to grow traditional age with all the resident halls, and going from about 9,000 students to 15,000 during the tenure here, needed somebody of his skill level. Asked him to come on board, but he wanted to check it out first as far as it goes, and Paul and Rudy Wilson and others who were instrumental in having Kevin come here. And I would think that we did a good job. I know that Kevin did a good job over the years. Hopefully my 7 years were meaningful as we professionalized the foundation with great help from Rich Hampton and others. We're really getting it on track to be an effective organization for the university, and Dave Oates over there too as far as one of the board members and chairman. But with all that said, and I can tell you many professional stories, but how about a few fun stories that have a professional slant to it? I'm not going to share my private and family times with Kevin. There was a lot of fun, and probably we don't want to talk about some of those either. But the professional ones were, at one point in time, working with the Chamber of Commerce. We were going to go over to a Cardinals game to be with community leaders all throughout the area. And they were suggesting we take public transportation, which I did not want to do. I said, the parking's right next to it. No, Kevin, you got to take public transportation. So we drove down to our East St. Louis campus, parked there, and took the Metrolink over to the game. We met all the folks we needed to do. It's kind of a blowout game. About the seventh inning, I give him the elbow, said, let's go. Let's beat the crowd. We're going out of there. Well, obviously hanging around the East Coast and the New York area, I know the subway system. Kevin knew it quite well, too, from different stops that he had. But we were talking away about things with the university, people we met, what was going on. And we walked down the wrong path. And so as we get on the train, we're heading, and it's noisy and everything else, and I look up at him and I point, and he goes, yeah, I know, we're going the wrong way. What we'll do is we'll get off at the first stop, get on the other train coming back. And we did that. And as it's noisy, we're sitting there, and I look, and he's holding a conversation, which is not unusual with somebody. And I looked up at him, I said, I couldn't hear him. I said, what? He goes, we're getting arrested. And I said, what do you mean we're getting arrested? He said, we can't do that. We were supposed to go off, go out, come back in and get it, so we're getting arrested. I said, this is silly. And so he's arguing with the transit authority, telling them, where does it say this? It's on the back of the ticket. That's not right. And if you know Kevin, if something's not right, he is going to take it and fight it all the way. He was about righteousness. So we get back, and this argument's going on. I'm sitting there, and there's crowds all over the place now because the game's over. And as we're walking through the crowd with this transit person, and all the crowd starts to come, I kind of invoke a little bit of my East Coastness, tap Kevin on the shoulder, And I say, let's go. Let's go the other way. They're not going to find us. He goes, I can't. I gave her my license. And, of course, appreciate this. I said, good boy from Toledo, Ohio, what are you giving the police your license for? You keep that in your pocket. And we couldn't. She finally finds one of the St. Louis policemen who said, let these two guys go. And then he starts arguing with her over, and she calls her supervisor. He comes down trying to tell the officer, let us go. She said, no, they violated it. He's saying it's not. I'm standing there. And she finally said, okay, we'll give you a warning. He goes, could I contest the warning? And they're going, no, you can't contest the warning. It's just a warning. He goes, absolutely, positively not. He goes, I want a ticket because I don't want to go contest this. I don't think it's right. In the meantime, I should have started a little bit part I missed is that when we left in the car, I took my cell phone and some cash to go to the game. That was it. I had no ID. So when they were talking about they would write a ticket, finally I said, I don't have any ID. They go, well, unfortunately, if you don't have ID, we got to arrest you. We got to take you down to the precinct, and then you get bailed out. And I'm looking at Kevin and going, take the warning. You know, they're going to arrest me. He goes, I can't contest the warning. I can't do that. He goes, I'll come and bail you out. I go, no, you're not coming to bail me out. Take the warning. One thing led to another over the next hour and a half. So now we're not out of the game early, hour and a half. And just our nature and fun was they wrote up the ticket. They finally said they could contest the warning. They finally let it go with that. We're going to contest the warning. They wrote up the ticket. They gave it to me. I was frustrated by everything that was going on. And so I asked the transit person, I said, I don't understand this warning and ticket. And she said, what? I said, right under here. What's this? She goes, that's your race. And I said, well, what's W? She said, that's white. I said, could you change it? I always consider myself Caucasian. And Kevin goes into a big route about it. She's probably going to put on black. I'm Puerto Rican, man. And this transit cop, the manager, goes, will you two guys just stop and just let us go? He was laughing. And that was always a fun story why we never took the Metro again ever in my life since I've been here. The other one, a quick one too, was to show you about, and Kevin was always a great advisor. And what I really appreciate about him is that, and I won't tell you some of the words sometimes he used, but when we do something, he'd argue and say, we need to do it this way. And then he would use one of his famous lines, pick one of your own. You've probably heard it before. I won't repeat it. And I said, where are you going? He goes, to do what you want to do. But he was going to tell you what he thought. But he was always going to comply and say, if you're the vice chancellor, we're going to do what we're going to do. So he was as people were saying, as the chancellor mentioned, a yes man. He was never that. And it was so valuable to have somebody like that. And he expected things to get done. The one time we were having a systems board meeting over the foundation, it was an emergency one. They were coming. There was no time to straighten up the foundation offices. And Kevin said he went upstairs to, at that time, our PR marketing people were on the second floor, went up and said they had to clean up not only conference room, everything else, but the bathrooms, and they were having a little bit of problem with it. And I said, well, what did you do to handle it? He goes, well, I told them that I'll come down and talk to the vice chancellor, say they don't want to clean upstairs when he's down here cleaning the bathrooms on the first floor. And I looked at him, I said, you told him I'm cleaning the bathrooms on the first floor? He goes, here's a bucket and a rag, get to it. And so I went and cleaned the bathrooms for our systems meeting, and I guess the message got upstairs that if I'm down here cleaning, they should clean too. So he was a tight charge type of guy. The foundation that's over there, when we came, we were off campus in Tusaski Center, about a mile away. The aspect of him and Brad Hewitt building the place, making things sure everything went, was quite a task. As Paul talks about, the foundation officers weren't finished on the second floor. We worked out a plan to do that, and he coordinated that beautiful conference room and all the spaces up on the second floor. Took pride in the patio area, getting all the flowers in with Chuck Tusaski and making it a beautiful area with the pond back there. The gardens at SIUE was another one. Somebody had said to me how much he loved the gardens, and he did. I said, not the first 6 months, because where it came into the relationship with the botanical gardens in a Gardens East project that Dave Warner agreed to, and with the Myers Arboretum, we were turning it into the gardens at SIUE. As we did that, Kevin said it's going to be a lot of work, and I looked at him, I said, not for me, you're in charge. And over the first year, there were some bumps in the road, coordinating with the different schools, with the faculty, with what was happening with the botanical gardens, but persevering and going through. Ree Hardy was another one, Ralph Cordy, who really put into the gardens and worked with Kevin and worked with the first director, built that place, and I think it's a beautiful testament to what his work was. And I know he had talents, and that he did many other things throughout the university. He's a good friend, great family member to our family. We took him in and had many Thanksgivings and Christmas, had balls, taking trips to Memphis, you name it, to Kansas City, all over the place for ball games and different activities. But like I said, I'll keep them to myself. But thank everybody at the university here for recognizing him today, and he will be missed.
Good afternoon. My name is Andy Fry, and I'm one of those student workers that Kevin had oversight over. I met Kevin in August of 2001, right after I'd graduated high school. Brad Hewitt was a friend of our family, and I needed a job, and my mom happened to ask Brad if he had any if he knew of any jobs on campus for me, because I was starting in here as a freshman. Brad said, "Yeah, I think I can hook him up with one," and he said, "Send him over on Monday." I started 2 weeks before I actually started school here. And so coming into the office, I thought I was going to be working for Brad, and it was going to be a pretty easy gig because I knew how Brad worked. And then I met Kevin. The first thing I learned how to do with Kevin was make a really strong cup of coffee that I didn't drink. And then the second job I remember doing was he said, "Hey, Andy, Vice Chancellor's going to be here later today, and he's got a white car." And I said, "Yeah?" He goes, "Well, he lives out in the country, and they just tarred his road. I need somebody to clean all the tar off of his car." And so I found out really quickly that Kevin was going to be a tough boss to work for. But I also found out very quickly how much of a friend Kevin would be throughout that time. Kevin became so much more than a boss to me as I worked for him. He became a friend. He became part of our family. He ended up hiring all three of my other brothers to work for him at the foundation. And he even called my mom, Mama Fry. So he really did become part of our family. He attended 3 of the 4 weddings that we've been married, of all of the guys that have been married. And unfortunately, he'll miss Caleb's. He was there for birthdays, funerals, weddings, births of our children. Kevin really was a great friend. But a couple of the things that stood out to me as other people talked about were how much fun Kevin liked to have. He called us, all of the guys that worked at Burger Hall were his boys. He said, "Me and my boys are going to go do this." And so he'd invite us and go buy us all Cardinals tickets, and we'd go to the Cardinal game. Or we'd go to Fairmont Racetrack. He'd invite us over to his house. If somebody didn't have somewhere to go for Thanksgiving or for Christmas, they were always welcome there. To the point where, the best party I think he ever threw was the one right after he moved into his house at Essick. I don't think he ever thought he'd really buy a house here in Edwardsville, because I don't think he thought he'd be here that long. And SIUE did become his home. And when he bought that house, he threw a party for all of his boys, and we never did get through that keg of Guinness. It might still be sitting there. I just want to share that Kevin was so much to so many of us. He was a family member, he was a friend, and he was a mentor to all of us. So for the student workers that may be here, Kevin was a great, great man. Thank you.
name is Caleb Fry. I'm Andy's younger brother, youngest actually, and I had the pleasure of meeting Kevin when I was about 6 or 7 years old when Andy went to work for him, and like he said, all of us went on to work for Kevin. And it was about when I was 10, we were at a social gathering, I can't remember where, but I looked at Kevin, I said, Kevin, when I get to SIUE, will I have a job there? And he sarcastically looked at me, thinking he would have been retired by then. Yeah, you can have a job. Well, 2013, I graduated from Everettsville High School, and I brought him my acceptance letter, and he said, God bless America, get in here. And we proceeded to talk for 2 or 3 hours in his home. It was just a short walk away from ours, and a couple weeks later, I was in his office. And like Andy said, the first thing we learned how to do was either make him a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. So many good memories about Kevin. Like Andy said, he was there for birthdays, graduations, weddings, and a fun story about Kevin. I think the first official job I ever did for him was when I was about between 10 or 12. My brother Matthew had graduated from college, and he was over at the graduation party. Of course, a bunch of Kevin's boys were there, as always, and we were having a good time. And if you didn't know Kevin, he liked to make sure his boys were always well-fed and had money in their pockets. And if you could do an odd job for Kevin, he'd make sure you were compensated. The other part of that is he also liked to make bets. I can't remember who it was, but he bet one of the guys that they couldn't walk through our underground dog fence line with the collar on. He wanted around his neck, but he settled for around the arm. Kevin leaned over to me and he said, I'll give you $2 if you turn it up from poodle to all the way to mastiff. So that was my first job working for Kevin. But he was a really good man. He always took care of us. He was at both of my graduation parties, high school and college. And I'm glad I made a phone call. This year's been tough. I had to push back my wedding this year. Kevin was one of the first people I called, and we talked on the phone for a good 15 or 20 minutes, and he said, it's a tough decision, but it's probably a good one. And he said, no matter what, I'm going to make sure I be there. And I know he won't be there next year physically to celebrate with us, but I know he'll be looking on. Thank you.
Bachelor's and master's degree. I'm sorry, Chef's kicking in. I got both the bachelor's and master's degree here, and I joined the Meridian Society over at the building there. Working with Julie and some of the other staff, I met Kevin, and I found him to be a very delightful person. I joined the board. I'm the membership chair for the Meridian Society. I work under Julie Babington and Mrs. Rachel Stack. So we've had a ton of lunches and other things, and Kevin was just always so delightful. Beautiful smile, as you can see. So much fun to be around. He would always be helping the students when I came there. Just full of fun and pleasure. And I noticed him to be very precise in his work. I saw him working on projects several times in the boardroom or in the side room there. He would be putting things together. And I don't, well, that I knew about him, he was very precise. He knew exactly what he wanted, whether it was food or putting together a program or helping. He just turned himself out to help other people. And when I found out via an email from Kate Warner that Kevin had passed, I was really upset. And, you know, then Julie kept looking to see if anybody was going to do anything to celebrate his life. And I am very grateful to SIUE. Whoever put this program on, his Celebration for Life, Kevin's not here, but I want to thank whoever the staff was that made this occasion happen, because he really, truly deserved it. And after working over 20 years here and putting all this time and energy in and loving the people here, I think it's wonderful that you all would host a tribute in his name. And I just want to thank everybody for what they've done for the Meridian Society and all the other events I've attended here as a graduate, a proud graduate of SIUE. And again, thank you.
Hi there. My name is Jake Ashby. I was another one of Kevin's boys. And the first story that I want to share, I'm going to go all the way back to my interview with him. And honestly, I can't remember most of the questions that he asked during it, because a lot of it was just, you know, it was like we were talking as friends already. But the one thing that I do remember was sitting there thinking about him and talking about him and the boys and his boys, and thinking that I was working with, or that if I got that job, I would be working with his sons. I honestly was 100% sure that I was going to be working with his children. And after I got that job, it didn't take me very long to realize that I was working with his kids, that he made sure to, like, he adopted every single one of us as his own. And it wasn't just a job, it was a mentorship, and he helped each of us become adults. We're 18-year-old kids, just graduated from high school, freshmen in college, and he was making sure that we were learning to be good adults and be productive members of society, making sure that we called our moms once a week and remembered birthdays and Mother's Day and all of that kind of stuff. And he was like another father to me, and I'm going to miss him dearly. I could always call him, and I always knew that he would be there.
Of Kevin, we would love to hear your memories, and we're so grateful to everyone that could be here today and everyone sharing your memories, and certainly the recollections that a lot of us have of Kevin and what he did for each of us as individuals, even if it was, just in a short period of time that we knew him, or like a lot of us who knew him for many more years. If not, I would like to thank everyone again for being here. Would you like to? Yeah, we're going to finish up here very quickly. I want to thank everyone again for being here. And as we close, I would like to invite John Page to the podium here to speak. John is Kevin's nephew.
Good afternoon, everybody. I want to say, first of all, on behalf of our family who is spread out from the East Coast to the West Coast and every other time zone in between who is watching this right now, I'm sure they are moved just like we've all been moved, and we're humbled by the acts of not only our uncle or their brother to this family that he has here in Edwardsville. And I know just from speaking with my uncle on a constant basis that I know how much SIU meant to him. And I know that this was his home. And yes, he's from Toledo, but Edwardsville was his home. Yeah, I know he had an affection and love for everybody here in this area and in town here. And you know, you never know until you actually meet people and you see people that the effect that one human being can have on many. If I sat here and spoke for a long time, I know I would feel a slap come above my head because my uncle would be, Kevin, and you all know Kevin, you like, just wrap it up. You know, hurry up, just wrap it up. So to wrap it up and to say thanks one more time, but to say something about Kevin is very simple. Kevin lived, and he lived life to the fullest, and he, yes, he was a mentor to all. I know from experience that Kevin would tell you things when you didn't want to hear it. Kevin would tell you about yourself when you didn't want to hear things about yourself, but he knew that you needed to hear things, and you valued those times. Kevin also gave us all, his nephews, his nieces, the opportunity to be us, just like it seems like he did for all his student workers. He gave us the opportunity to be who we are, and gave us the opportunity to develop and mature, and to give us, you know, he would make time for each and every one of us. And, you know, that's hard to do from a family of our size. And, you know, we all relished that time and we had with him. And so, once again, thank you for the university. Thank you for the athletic department, Jason and Tim. Thank you so much. Chancellor, thank you for allowing us to have this here. We appreciate this. We appreciate you as his family, and we will not forget you. And just because he's going to go back to Toledo, he'll still be here. And so, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again for being here. I know I share in our department and our university's sorrow and our condolences that we share with the family and all of the friends of Kevin. Again, I would ask that you would wait in your seats. We will have a staff member come and kind of release everybody so that we don't get a conglomeration of people at any of the exits. And we certainly appreciate your time, and we appreciate you sharing your memories of Kevin Martin. Thank you.